Okay, hi everybody, welcome back to Carol Life Podcast with me, Phyllis Mackenzie. If you're new here, check all our social media pages. Links will be in the description down below. And as always, I have a new guest with us here today. Her name is Willow. She is an author, but I don't want to ruin anything. I just want her to introduce herself. So, hi Willow, say hi to the people on the show.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
I think everything is going great because we've rescheduled this particular episode, almost twice now, I believe.
It has been a couple of times, but I'm excited that we get to do it now. It's awesome.
It is. So, can you just tell us who is Willow? Who is Willow Becker?
Oh, wow. I am a mom and a writer, an actress and a teacher, a publisher, a weirdo. I like to dance in my house when no one is around without clothes on. So there's like a lot of things about me that you're probably going to know that you don't really need to know.
And today I think we're going to be talking about your books. Audience, once we can just have you here and then you can just dive into the weirdness of who you are. But I'm curious, Willow, the author, how did you find yourself stumbling upon the path of writing books?
That's a good question. When I was really young, I had a knack for writing. I remember the first book I ever published, it was a self-published novel actually it wasn't a novel. It was a self-published book of poetry called Poetry. I was 4 years old and I was really proud of that book. I was really proud of it. I actually had a quote from myself on the front page of the book, and the quote was, "Poetry is art, but with words." And that was my brilliance as a 4-year-old with myself. I thought it was really, really, really very erudite. So, so actually I really, from a really young age, I loved words. I was really good with words. And I grew up learning perhaps the most difficult language in the world, which is English, which is a really, really great blessing for me. So I was able to learn how to kind of master English. And from then I loved telling stories. I mean, even from a very young age, I told stories around the campfire to my cousins and my brother, and I just loved playing pretend, and all of those things just kind of coalesced when I got to be a married person. And I had written a number of stories, throughout school, but by the time I was in college and I was married, I had wanted to be an actress for a really long time. And my husband really wasn't about that actress life. I just kept getting put into positions and roles where I was kind of a young love interest, and he really just didn't like it. So I thought, well, you know what? I got to do something to be creative, and I have always liked writing stories. So I'm just going to write some stories. I'm going to write. That's what I do. And so, so I started writing seriously in around 2000 and I started writing seriously in 2012. So just about 10 years ago. Yeah, that's it. That's what I got.
Oh, okay. And I think that you're actually what I'd define as a unicorn in the writing industry, because you are an author, but apart from being an author, you're a publishing executive, which is rare. Finding somebody in publishing who can write books by themselves without actually finding a ghostwriter for themselves. So, what's it like? What's the life like being an author, and then on the other side of the mirror, you're a publisher as well?
I think that it's weird. My life is actually really unusual, because I was in marketing for a long time. So I started really focusing on on writing about 11, 12 years ago now, 11 years ago. And I really wanted to be an author, and I wrote a novel, and it was fine, and it wasn't great. I wrote some short stories, and they were okay. And so I actually ended up going into content writing as a way to continue writing and make money. Because fiction doesn't really actually make a huge amount of money. It's a pretty lean business. So, I became a content writer, and I would write for websites, and I wrote blogs and things like that. And I did really well at that. And I did so well at that people put me into, social media and marketing because I was good with sales. And so I ended up being a marketing executive. I've spent most of the last decade doing that. And so I remember sitting at a conference, just a few years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago now. And I was at a conference, talk about self-publishing. And they were talking about, all the different hats that a self-publisher has to wear. You are the writer, obviously, but you're also the marketing executive, and you're the video producer, and you're the, the promotions manager, and you do all of the things at once. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I could totally do that. I've done all of these jobs professionally. I've been a marketing executive. I've ran promotions. I've run promotions before. I worked in news. I worked in radio. I've written video scripts. I've done video production. So I've actually done all of this different stuff. So my daily life is actually kind of a combination of all of the things that I've done. So I write, which is great, and I love writing, and I actually released my first novel here last December. But besides writing, a lot of my day is spent building and designing my website and managing all the back end access for my staff and project managing. And I do a lot of outreach to local bookstores and authors and other people who are running Kickstarters. And I, create content on TikTok and Instagram for people who are interested in publishing or starting a small press. And so my daily life is all of the things that I've done, my marketing, my video production, even my news. I still write my own press releases. I still write my own social media a lot of times. And I'm a graphic designer as well. So I graphic design most of the book covers that we have. I graphic design, all of our ad, content, and all of these things are things that I've been doing for the last decade. So, that's what it's like. It's like being a one-man band and just doing all of the things that I really like to do and bring me joy.
And I'm quite curious, when it comes to your books, you write horror and science fiction. Why these two genres? Because you find that a lot of people these days, especially in this century, they're embracing horror and science fiction when there's a lot of other genres that they could write. So for you personally, what led you into writing horror and science fiction stories?
I always say that the reason I write horror is because I had a series of very bad babysitters when I was younger. When I was really little, my next door neighbor she was about my age. I was maybe 3 or 4. I was really little. She had some really big brothers, and one day they were watching Poltergeist, and they forced me to sit with them and watch it, and they held me against my will. They forced me to watch this movie, and it was terrifying. It was a really horrible experience. And then it was not very much later when I had another babysitter, and they forced us to watch The Evil Dead as a family. I was with her family, and they were watching it on a Friday night, and I'm I don't want to watch this because I was 4. And she's stop being such a baby and just watch it. So anyway, it was terrifying. But I think that those early experiences where I was just forced into watching these really scary things, I think they may have altered my brain chemistry or something, but I have always been really drawn to horror. I find it to be really compelling, And I do love reading it, you know, like I grew up reading Stephen King, and I grew up reading Gothic fairy tales and Gothic, you know, literature, and I really love it. And I think that the reason, you know, I'm trying to figure out why it is that we write horror, but I do think that the reason for me is something about control, because and you know, in real life, you can't control the terrible things that happen. Things happen and they're terrible. And a lot of times the bad guy gets away, or, you know, it seems like the person who's undergoing the terror doesn't deserve that, you know, they don't deserve it. And in horror, when you're writing it, that happens too. But I feel like when you're writing horror, you're attempting to gain control over something that you really truly have no control over. And so it gives you this sense of order in the universe and rightness. You can maybe right the wrongs and of the universe. I just recently saw Black Phone with Ethan Hawke.
I've actually yet to watch that. I literally was about to watch it today.
Oh yeah, it's really good. I really liked it. It was based off of a short story by Joe Hill, and then he is one of the producers on that project. But I just liked it a lot because, you know, you're taking something that's really terrible, and this isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailer, but you know, there's a killer who's abducting young men, and it's in the 70s, and that's a thing that really happened, you know, and the end of that story is really horrible. Like the reality of that story is horrible and gruesome and really super sad. But I like taking those same ideas and then turning them into fiction, because of course the element of reality is there, but you have an opportunity to control the outcome. You control all of the elements inside of it. And so I think that there makes it room for hope, which is what I really love about horror. I think horror has the opportunity to do a lot of really great good.
Yeah, you know, when you speak about horror like that, it's actually one of the reasons I started the second podcast. And I normally tell people this a lot because I find horror fascinating, like you said. And like other genres, it's like the one aspect of books or maybe films that gives you the power to ask what if. Because, you know, when it comes to genres, it's not like science fiction. Science fiction, in your heart, you know this is complete lies. But with horror films, there is a very high chance that that is based on a true story. Like The Conjuring. The Conjuring, I've watched it over 7 times. It's one of my favorite horror films. I've watched it over 7 times, the whole entire franchise, including anything to do with The Nun. I'm waiting for The Nun 2 this year. Literally, I'm on my toes just waiting for it. I love horror that much because I grew up with reading Stephen King just like you, but also being obsessed with the books by R.L. Stine, like Goosebumps. I love those books so much.
Yeah.
I adore those books so much. And the fact that he brings horror into the adult world, because like a couple of weeks ago, he announced that he's bringing an adult version of what is Goosebumps. He wrote like a new story, a new book that's fit for adults. It's not for kids. It's more scary. It's more open, that adults can enjoy. And I'm like, you see, this is the right direction. This is what people should be embracing, because there's a very high chance somebody out there can just say, oh my God, my grandma told me a similar story and now it's been written. Or you're like, oh my God, this happened to me and now it's being written. That aspect of saying what if is what I enjoy so much when it comes to horror films. It's like nothing else you can do. Like, absolutely one of the best genres on this planet.
You know, it's really great. I actually think that's true. That's one of the reasons why I started my press is I felt like there was a lot of horror. You know, there was a lot of horror being written, and it just wasn't for me. Like I felt like there's a lot of horror out there that is pushing extreme limits. Like they want more gore and more violence. And I saw a post today from an author that I do respect. I think he's wonderful. But basically he was saying, isn't it funny that people have no idea what they're getting into when they read my book? There's bestiality and incest and cannibalism. And I'm like, the opposite of what I want to read. Like, I don't want to read that. That's just me. And it's okay if that's what you want to read. But for me, I really want something like scary stories to tell in the dark. I really want something like Goosebumps. I want something that is fun, and it gives you the shivers, it makes you feel creeped out. It gives you the sense of dread, but it doesn't make you feel dirty after you've done reading it, And I feel like that's where my company, Weird Little Worlds, we split off, because I think that a lot of horror is turning towards, well, how gross can we go? How disgusting can we be? What are the social mores, and how do we break through them? This transgressive art kind of style. And I want to not do that. I want to do something that's fun and scary, but also that you can like have on your shelf in your house. And if you have a teenager, they can read it, and it's okay. Like, it's not going to, emotionally and permanently damage them if they get a hold of that. It is going to be a spooky ride. And when you're done, you're going to be like, wow, that was a fun, spooky ride.
What about other genres? Do you see yourself like dipping your toes in other forms of writing?
Well, I do love science fiction. I love horror, and that's what I mostly read, and that's what so far our press has mostly published. But I write science fiction, and I like science fiction a lot just because it gives me an opportunity to ask that big, question, the what if question. What if we had the technology to do X, Y, or Z? My most recent book, it's about a girl who helps to invent a teleportation prototype. And I think that when I first started writing that book, I would think about it and be like, this is so far-fetched. This is never going to happen. But over the last couple of years, there have actually been scientific kind of inroads towards the concept of teleportation, towards the concept of moving matter across, long distances at faster than light travel. And I love that. I love that science fiction gives you this space to say, well, what is next? What can we invent next? What would it be like in the future if we could do this thing, if we could travel faster than light, if we could communicate without words, I just love that opportunity to think like that. And so science fiction is a big love of mine. And then I love all kinds of lengths of stories. So I've written novellas and novels and short fiction and flash fiction and microfiction. I just think that every different kind of size of story is almost its own genre, and mastering those, especially the small, the poetry and the small fiction, I really think that is a great gift.
And Willow, you've been in the industry for so long, like you mentioned. So what are the challenges that maybe you or other authors have come to you with? Because you find that people have their own challenges when it comes to writing. It's either the writing process, or maybe the publishing process, or even the marketing process. So what are like similar or maybe major challenges that you have come across?
I think that the major challenge that I see right now is that everyone feels so small. Like it just feels so hard because there's so much access to publishing. You can publish your own work. You can publish with a small publisher like myself, or you can publish with one of the big 5. But no matter where you publish, you are one tiny fish in an ocean of content. And so it's not even just a matter of competing against the writer next to you, which we don't really do that anyway. And that's something to really consider, is you're not really competing with the writer next to you. You are competing for someone's brain. So you're competing with Netflix, and you're competing with Facebook, and you're competing with, Instagram, and TikTok and YouTube. That's really what you're competing with. And so when you're a novelist and you're writing books, you just have to remember that, number one, you really can't compete. You're just not going to get all the people all the time. And so it's best to figure out how to create a marketing strategy that attracts the people who want to find you. Because if you imagine all of the people who are consuming content, I mean, we're talking about billions of people who are consuming content on their phones and their televisions and their iPads, and all you really need is 0.0000001% of those people, and you have a really strong fan base. You know, that's 10,000 people or whatever. So you really don't need to focus on trying to get everybody's attention. You just need to find your people, and what, like they say niche down, niche down. Find your people, by being yourself. And if you find your people, then you will find your fans, and you'll know exactly what they want, what they want to read next, because it's going to be what you want to write.
And I'm sure that there's this other question people are asking a lot. How does one get a publisher? Because it's hard finding a publisher these days, small or big. It's hard as an author, especially as a new author, to find somebody who will believe in you and they're like, okay, we are ready to represent you. We are ready to be your publisher. We are ready to help you with marketing. What are the ways that people can find publishers out there who are willing to help their works get published?
Well, that's the age-old question, right? Like everybody wants to get published. And it used to be that if you wanted to get published, and I am actually going to quote from Stephen King's book on writing, but he said it used to be when you wanted to get published, you would write some stories. You would maybe submit them from some awards. Maybe you'd win an award. Then you would submit to one of the many magazines or newspapers or something like that. You would submit some short work, and then you would start getting noticed in these markets. Well, that's not really the way it works anymore. Although the concept, I think, is really similar, because the markets don't exist the way they used to. You know, we were just talking, I saw somebody online talking about Raylan.com. Raylan, R-A-L-A-N, used to be this marketplace that you would go and you would find paying work, really good paying work if you were a dark fiction writer, horror and dark science, dark fantasy, dark science fiction. And they're good. They're just done. Their website's just done. We don't know why. Yeah, it's just closed. It's just closed up shop, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the markets themselves are closing. You know, the markets themselves are slimming down. There are great, fantastic small short fiction markets that are in peril, that have been around for 100 years. You know, science fiction, Asimov's science fiction, and you know, things like the science fiction medicine show. I can't remember the name of it. But there's all these really great markets that are just, they're not as robust as they used to be. And it has to do with the way people consume media. And so people are consuming media online now. And that means that if you are a fiction writer, you have to be competing online. And that market is huge. Like I said, it's a huge market. So you can do that old, write some short fiction, send it off to people, try to win some awards. There's lots more awards now, so maybe you can win some of those. That's good. You can, finish your novel up, make sure it's really great, go to some conferences, and then try to get an agent, because if you want to get published with one of the big big four publishers, then you'll need an agent. But as for me, I realized a while ago that I just wasn't going to be able to compete. I just didn't want to spend the time and effort and energy doing all that stuff. And so I did something totally different. I started a publishing company. And as a publishing company, it's a little bit different than self-publishing, because, you can always self-publish, right? But if you're self-publishing, you're missing some key components that are really valuable when you are published traditionally, or even published with an indie press. And so as an indie press, I really focused on making my press a legitimate press. And I didn't focus on my own writing. I focused on making a legitimate press, creating some really great books, which is what we did. We've had 2 Bram Stoker Award nominated or 2 Bram Stoker Award, listed books. They've been put on the, preliminary ballots. And then this last year, our anthology, Mother, Tales of Love and Terror, actually made it onto the final nomination ballot. So we've been really focused on making great books and building relationships with the community and helping people realize that we're a real press, that we really want to create great books. And as a side benefit, because I am the CEO of the press, I'm also publishing my books. So it's now my books are published through a reputable publisher, because I've spent, the last few years making sure that I have a reputable press. And that's how I did it. And I think that that's the takeaway, is that if you really want to be published, there are ways to do that. There are independent presses like myself who are interested in picking up books. We're always interested in picking up books. There are audio publishers who would love to make your book into an audio drama. There are television shows who would love to make your book into a TV show or a movie. Everyone is looking for content. And if you are trapped in the mindset that you can only get published by Penguin or Random House, you're going to be waiting a long time, because that list and that line is really, really long. Not to say it's not a good and valid, that's a great, if you want to do that, if that's your, life goal, then you go do that. But as for me, I would much rather make my own luck, as it were, and try to make my own way in a very, very rapidly changing media landscape, where you have to just be willing to shift and go where the interest and the excitement are. And that's what I would say. Be really flexible about what you want your dreams to be.
And what are your plans for probably the rest of the months in this year and maybe in the near future?
Well, we have a lot of stuff going on right now. Actually, we're currently 2 weeks away from finishing our Kickstarter for 2023. We do a Kickstarter every year, and it helps to fund our business for the next year. This year we're doing a really big one. It's called Playlist of the Damned, and it's a horror anthology about music. And so we're really excited about that. So we have a couple weeks left on that, and we open up submissions for that anthology today. So we already have 50 submissions or something, and we've been open for just a few hours now. So we're excited about the submissions that we're getting. We also have been reading for an acquisitions period for this year that we will be sending an email out about hopefully tomorrow. I was going to do it today, but not anymore. But we are going to be buying 4 novellas and 4 novels and turning those into books that we represent. So we're really excited about acquiring those, and those, so that's a really big part of what we're doing this year. And then I have another book that will be releasing in December, the second book in my trilogy called Leto's Legacy. So another science fiction book for me. So it's very busy, and of course we'll be doing all kinds of stuff. We'll be going to the StokerCon because we've been nominated for the Bram Stoker Award for Best Anthology of the Year. And so I'm excited about that. And generally, just going to conventions and talking to people and selling books. So it's just a busy, busy life.
Yeah, and as we bring this episode to an end, if people listening would like to maybe find your book or maybe even find your press or join a newsletter, where exactly would they have to go?
You can find us at weirdlittleworlds.com, and that's more than one world, so Weird Little Worlds with a S at the end. And you can find us there. You can find us on Twitter at WeirdLitWorlds, and also at Instagram at WeirdLitWorlds. And you can find me at willowbecker.com. So we're really easy to find, and also if you wanted to, you could check out the book that we're getting ready to publish this year, and then you can submit by taking a look at Kickstarter, and then on Kickstarter just search for Playlist of the Damned, D-A-M-N-E-D, and you'll be able to find us, and you can back us, or you can submit a story, or whatever you want to do. But yeah, just for 2 more weeks, we'd have that up running, and we're really excited about how it's going. It's been a really fun time.
So guys, you've heard that, and just in case you didn't catch anything, I'll leave it in the description down below, because if anybody's listening and is like me, I'll forget absolutely everything. I'll just turn on Twitter and then I'm like, what did she say? What was the link? What was the website? So I'll just link everything, absolutely everything in the description. Anything to do with Willow, anything to do with her books, anything to do with the press, also anything to do with the submissions, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Submissions open today, and we're excited to have you submit.
Yeah. So you can just check out both our social media pages down below. Make sure you like, you share, you follow, you subscribe, ask questions over there. If you have further questions regarding publishing or maybe how to write your book or things like that, you can ask Willow directly, or maybe leave a comment on whatever platform you're listening from, and then I'll forward all the questions to her, and hopefully she'll reply to them. And then you guys can get a glimpse of what it's like to be published by indie press, because I'm sure a lot of people out there listening are just self-published on Amazon, including me myself. Yeah, a lot of people.
The best thing about being published by an indie press is that you don't have to do your own marketing, or you have to do less of it. That's the best part.
But anyways, Willow, thank you so much for joining us here today on the KR Life podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think I'll see you all next time where we have a new guest on the show. I don't know who it will be. Who knows? It's a mystery as always. We just find out every time the podcast begins. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I've been your host, Z, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye!